Hi, I'm Robert McBride of All Classical FM in Portland, and this, of course, is the lovely and talented Carlos Kalmar.
Hey,
Yay!
good evening.
Who has an interesting concert for us tonight with Schubert and Rossini, which immediately, as soon as I saw it, reminded me of Schubert trying to out-Rossini Rossini with his overture in the Italian style. He got annoyed, apparently, that somebody was saying how great the Rossini overtures were, and so he thought, well, I can dash one of those off. So he did, but it sounds more like Schubert than Rossini. So how did you decide to put a Schubert symphony and a big Rossini choral work on the same concert?
Actually, because they have something in common, not musically speaking. Or yes, musically speaking, but not in the sense that one was written because of the other. It's just that I always felt that the Rossini, the little C major symphony, as we call it, has something Rossinesque in it. There is one segment, I know, this is just me just thinking crazy stuff. There is one moment in the last movement that reminds me so much of Rossini, where everybody, all the strings does yun dun 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 dun, and all the woodwinds do is do 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 4 times, and I think like, yeah, that's Rossini.
They were almost the same age. Rossini was a few years older, way more successful and more famous. It was interesting to read the program notes in your book for tonight, in which Elizabeth Schwartz talks about Schubert trying desperately to be a successful opera composer and failing miserably, though she describes some of his songs as micro-operas, which I think is really great. Like Death and the Maiden is so dramatic and has the story. You got to read the program notes. They're good. There's also a really good interview with a wonderful violinist who's coming to town soon, Midori, who is a very intelligent, well-spoken woman, judging from this interview.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Midori. But we'll talk about Midori when Midori comes in.
We will.
Yeah. Because now we can talk about Mr. Schubert and his lack of dramatism. Because I think that's Schubert throughout his life, he tried always to write an opera. I actually saw one, and it's very good music. You think a little bit that I saw an opera called Fierabras, because there was 12 years ago, 15, there was a very interesting production in Vienna, probably even more years ago. Anyway, there was a production in Vienna that kind of put together 2 of the very, very big heads in music. One, Nikolaus Harnoncourt, and if anybody can pull off something that is slightly strange or not so well regarded, meaning an opera by Mr. Schubert, it is Nikolaus. And at that time in Europe, extremely famed German stage director Ruth Berghaus. Have you ever heard about her?
No.
Oh, well.
She hasn't heard of me either.
It's like, well, she's dead. She died many years ago, way too young. I think she was in her 60s, barely. But Ruth Berghaus was when you go to Europe, specifically to German opera houses, and you think, oh, this is so modern, I have no idea what they are doing. Well, Ruth Berghaus is one of them. Actually, the interesting point is, yes, she was very modern as a stage director, very modern. But it all made sense. Sometimes the sense that she made out of a piece was not really what the piece was about. And it was very famous that she got into fights with several conductors, which must have been fun. But anyway, the 2 of them made a production together, and it was really glorious.
You found the music in that Schubert opera to be, as you said, effective. So the story is what held it back?
The music was fantastic. The problem with Schubert operas is what I already said, lack of dramatism. This operatic dramatism, that's not Schubert. And even I would personally argue that the Death and the Maiden by the little song 4 Minutes of Glory of Schubert is actually not a micro-opera.
But the Earl King.
That is, the Erlkönig that's an opera. Okay, fine, I give you that. But Schubert is always about simple songs. When I didn't know this, but I realized by reading the wonderful, I have to correct myself so that nobody in this audience tracks down what I've just said about Harnoncourt and Ruth Berghaus and then says, Carlos said it was this. No, it was not Nicolas Harnoncourt. I apologize. It was Claudio Abbado. But you know, I'm getting older, the memory is not working. Anyhow, the thing is that Schubert always writes lieder, songs. When we started rehearsing this piece, I realized all of a sudden that the Oregon Symphony, although being already 112 years old, has never played Schubert 6. And I thought, like, what on earth is going on here? So we were rehearsing, the orchestra was enjoying music that they actually had no idea how it really sounded. And I told them, just to give them an idea of what the music is about, I said, if we all think back into the 60s, until the time of Woodstock, and there was one American singer which we all adored, which was Joan Baez. And I remember Joan Baez as being a singer who was just standing there and singing the most sublime lines, and it was always simple, approachable, somewhat repetitive, but just the glory of music, of songwriting. Am I saying something silly about Joan Baez?
She's on Club Mod tonight. It's true. It's a Grammy show tonight. That's my little plug for my Saturday night. Modern Music Sandbox, Club Mod, 8 to 10 on All Classical FM.
See?
So you're talking about the song-like quality that infuses Schubert's Sixth Symphony?
When you study a little bit of Schubert's songs, which as a musician you have to do, you realize Schubert is, in a way, very simple. In a way. But somehow you move a little thing out of the music that he wrote and the perfection goes away. For me, and just to tell you some other thing, because I thought about that, what I am of Austrian heritage, so I speak German. So for me, Schubert is, and lieder, songs, are is the bread and butter. I grew up with that, and I know so many of them backwards. So for me, it's also a linguistic way of communicating to music. And the fact that this guy invented what he invented, and I can relate not only on a musical standpoint, but also on the standpoint of matching music with literature and the way he did it. It's, to put it in other words, when it comes to composition of songs, arts, what we call in English art songs, there is no doubt, and please don't get into a fight with me about that, Schubert is up there and nobody else is there. It's Schubert alone. It's like in classical music overall, we can, it's not even that we are going to have an argument, but I would dare to say that most of us think that up there in heaven is Mr. Bach and Mr. Mozart. And then you think, yeah, but several others are very close to that. In Lied, in songs, it's Schubert up there and nobody else. And don't come to me and say, but Mr. Hugo Wolf. You can say, because you know me now for a couple of years, Brahms. And I will say, yeah, Brahms, yeah. But Schubert.
You're never inclined to leave Brahms out whenever you can fit him in.
Excuse me, listen to Brahms and you know what I talk about.
No,
but the thing is...
Have you ever sung any Schubert songs? I mean, you have been singing.
In the bathtub, of course.
But otherwise?
You don't want to hear it.
But you have, at some point in your life.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. So it really is in
It
you.
is like Schubert. Another thing that I can really tell you, when it comes to this silly question that we don't want to hear, what is the music that you're going to take to the island when you are allowed only 3 pieces, composers? Oh, hate it. I would have trouble, but I dare to say Schubert is one of them. Because Schubert is the king of melody. The melodies of Schubert are just so pure. Sometimes they are very simple, but it's just something emanates out of this guy. And even in the symphony that you're going to hear tonight, I'm always astounded by 2 things, the simplicity and the perfection. And it's very, very beautiful. When we get to the second movement, the slow movement of this little symphony, of course it is a song, something like that, and you can follow it. It's very approachable, you'll remember it, and then you realize that he always gets back to the melody of the beginning, and there is one little thing that is a little bit different, a tiny something, a rhythm, adding one little instrument. So today I again insisted when the rehearsal, there is, in the very last time when this melody comes, there is 2 bars before that I said, please, just for me, allow myself to be a little sentimental, because Schubert is a little bit sentimental. And then it starts again with a melody from the beginning, this dee-ra-ram, dee-ram. And then there is something that maybe all of us, at least my eyes are not so great, so I don't see anybody who is just 15 years old. Do you remember the movie Mozart? Hollywood movie? Okay. In the movie Mozart, do you remember that at the beginning the actor, Mr. Abraham, I think it was, playing Salieri. Salieri is sitting there angry about Mozart the Great and so on, and he says, Salieri recounts the first time in his life when he heard music by Mozart, and he said it was the Gran Partita for winds. And it sounded like a little screechy here and there. I remember that so distinctly. And then this actor says, Salieri says, and then an oboe played. See? And that is exactly what happens in the last recapitulation, the second movement. It is exactly the same music as the beginning, and then for 2 bars, an oboe plays, and it's like an angel. I'm getting carried away. You realize that I like Schubert, okay?
Yeah, you're taking us with you. It's a nice journey. So the only reason the Symphony No. 6 by Schubert is called Little, because it's half an hour long, is that the Symphony No. 9 by Schubert is in the same key, and it's an hour long, and so it's the great C major symphony, which we'll hear on this stage some other time, and have before. I think it's really cool that the orchestra's never played the 6th before, so this will be the first time.
I mean, during the time, the thing is, as you know, I never build programs and think, okay, what has the orchestra never played? Because then I'm shocked. So I know that, matter of fact, tonight, Schubert 6 never played, Stabat Mater once. Next weekend, if you didn't have tickets, can I lobby, please? We have a single performance in Portland, which is Sunday at 2, and the entire program has never been played by the Oregon Symphony. And trust me, I will not take off in terms of an angel came down. It's not about an angel, really not. But Vaughan Williams' Symphony No. 6 and Le Bourgeois Gentilhomme by Richard Strauss are absolutely stunning works, so you should come again.
And again, you can read about that concert as well in your program tonight. Okay, Schubert 6, intermission. Rossini, Stabat Mater. Now, I knew this piece existed, but I had never heard it until today.
Really?
Put on a CD and listen.
And what do you think?
I think it's quite remarkable. I enjoy the contrast between the choral sections, which are more I guess traditionally sort of ecclesiastical sounding, probably closer to what Rossini heard growing up as an Italian composer in Italy, Catholic guy. He would have heard sacred music. And then the arias and duets, which are a little more operatic in style. What blows my mind the most is the next to last movement, which is a quartet for the soloists or sometimes sung by the whole choir, in which they're singing about their bodies disintegrating in death. And the music is wildly chromatic. You could plop that down in a Penderecki Stabat Mater and nobody would even notice.
Well, the thing with the Stabat Mater by Rossini overall, just to start with, is the story behind this is a riot. It's so funny because it reminded, when I read about the story of the Rossini Stabat Mater, I thought, oh, sounds like the story of the very late 20th century or 21st century because it's about outsourcing. It's very simple. I mean, Rossini did get kind of the assignment. He has to, or he was being asked to write a Stabat Mater, and for many reasons he was very reluctant, but finally he did, and then it was published in 6 movements where just outsourced, somebody else had written that. And later he got the pressure that, excuse me, we have to publish Rossini's Stabat Mater, but 6 movements are not by Rossini. They are by some Italian composer who nobody remembers anyway, so please can you write it down? So in the end he wrote it down, and the version that you are going to hear is pure Rossini, but just the idea that you would go there and say, I have an assignment to write a huge piece. Can you do it, please, for me? I just put my name. I love that. It's outsourcing.
It's a Tom Sawyer approach to writing a big piece of music.
But the thing is, of course, when we are talking about the Stabat Mater by Rossini, we're talking about a time when actually Rossini was already retired. Rossini is the perfect example of a composer who had just exhausted himself by choice, working like a maniac for opera, being wildly successful, writing an insane amount of operas, more than he actually could humanly possibly write. That's why in some of the operas you hear arias that belong to a different opera, and he just changed the lyrics and maybe one instrument, and off we go. It's all fun. But he had retired to Paris. He actually was very reluctant to write anything sacred because he thought his style is not really appropriate. On top of that, Stabat Mater was, at least for an Italian composer, a synonym for the genius work by Giovanni Battista Pergolesi. And Pergolesi's Stabat Mater is just a landmark, and you just don't want to go there. It's the same story pretty much as you don't want to write a Symphony No. 9 because Beethoven is always like peeking over your shoulder. And nonetheless, in the end, okay, he said, I will write it. And then he outsourced it. This piece is actually, it goes in several directions, because on one side you have Rossini as we all adore him, second movement. It's what we call a bravura aria for a tenor. It's really difficult. It's very Rossinesque. And it's still very meaningful. And then he does twice in his piece something that we don't expect. One time it's the chorus with the bass, and the other time is what Robert just mentioned, the second to last movement, where he just leaves the orchestra out, no orchestra, only singing voices. And specifically the second time you think, oh, this harmonies, I don't recognize Mr. Rossini. Of course you don't, because there are at least some things in this Stabat Mater that point in the direction of another great, great Italian composer by the name of Giuseppe Verdi. I mean, it's at least for me, it's very obvious.
I thought that too.
Yeah, Verdi's Requiem, and specifically his 4 sacred pieces, draw from some of the way Rossini treats the chorus. It's astounding. And then there is also one little section. This is a very, how can I say this? It's a democratic piece of music, meaning it is. There are 4 soloists and each of them gets 1 aria. It's very democratic. The girls get a remarkable duet on top of that. And then there is 1 quartet with the orchestra. But everybody has his share. Now, in terms of how the arias, where the chorus most of the time doesn't say a word, work, there is the tenor aria that's a bravura. There is the bass aria, which is somewhat darkish in the way it starts, a little spooky in Rossini's style, you can say, and then it gets very beautiful, and you understand more of this kind of somehow uplifting style that Rossini never could deny. The aria for the mezzo-soprano, actually mezzo-soprano is incorrect. In this piece, that's the way it's marked in the score, it's not a mezzo-soprano, it's a secondo soprano, but so be it. It's insane. You have to really enjoy Eve, our soloist Eve, when she sits on a low B and gets louder and louder. I adore it. We were chatting, the soloist and I, and we said we believe that Rossini must have hated the soprano he wrote that aria for. Really. And then, finally, you have to wait so long, comes the aria for the soprano, and that again, Verdi, very clearly. It's the only aria in the entire piece that is very dramatic, very everything is operatic, but that is operatic in the sense of a drama. And if we all remember for a second the great opera by Mr. Verdi called Rigoletto. In Rigoletto, the great aria in the second act by Rigoletto, this Cortigiani, Vil Razza, starts with the orchestra. It's very intense. Well, you're going to hear it. It's not like in Verdi, it's it's that in Rossini, but it's very clear. One points to the other. And it's not, I'm sure Rossini didn't mean it in a funny way, but the ending of the piece, rightly so you can argue, is the only really fast movement in the entire piece. This piece, every Stabat Mater you will find along the line, meaning the very famous one, Pergolesi, Rossini, Dvorak, unbelievable Stabat Mater, is an array of slow movements. And the last one may be fast. And so it is here. It's like, okay, we have said everything about the sorrow of the Virgin Mary watching her son die, and now it's time to say amen and let's go home. That's what it is.
When did you discover this piece, and when did you first conduct it?
I conducted, actually this is my first time. And I discovered it, oh boy. When I was a kid, for whatever reason, I always have adored singers my entire life. Singers are like, can't get enough of human voices. At that time, for whatever reason, somebody had told, I was maybe 12. I was still living in Montevideo. Somebody told me, or I heard it on the radio, I don't know, about a Swedish tenor. So I bought a long play, if you remember how they look like. Today only CDs. Long play of the great Swedish tenor Jussi Björling. If you have never heard of this man and you think about what a great Italian-style tenor can do, go and check it out. Jussi Björling. Jussi Björling on that long play, sang an aria of Stabat Mater called Cuius Animam. And I was listening and I thought like, oh my God, this is insane. I mean, hard, bravura, really difficult, and great music, sung very well on top of that. And from there, I just, little by little, then I learned the bass aria, and so I learned one aria after the other.
Well, congratulations. Tonight you finally get to put it all together for the first time. How exciting.
Well, yeah, it's always glorious that you are allowed to do something. But matter of fact, just to speak about the four soloists you're going to see, we got quite a young cast, and actually I'm very, very happy that for everybody of you who has been going to our friends in the Keller Auditorium of the Opera, we are bringing back a tenor who was in the Young Artists program of Portland Opera for 2 years. If you remember, he's a great talent. Brendan Toohey, a real high tenor that you never think that he would be a tenor because he's 6'4", and I mean, tenors are always this high, but this, so Brendan is going to be there, and there will be, I don't want to put your attention at one singer, but just to mention, I know that 2 of these singers have been participating, or are still participating, in what we call here in America the Young Artists program. So Brendan was in Portland, he's now in Houston Grand Opera. And the soprano, watch out for this young lady, trust me, is saying, please remember the name Amber Wagner. She's finishing up her 3rd year in the Young Artists program in Chicago Lyric Opera. Great voice, great voice.
We have to stop, but do you want to mention the other 2 or just leave it at that?
Ben Wager is a bass I found because I had talked, the bass is a bass I found because I talked to a friend who is an agent. And I said to me, I'm having trouble casting Stabat Mater. I don't find a bass that I actually like. And he said, I have a bass. And he forwarded me just files with sound. Because I'm not going to hire somebody because a friend knows him. And I really like this guy, and it's working very, very well. Really very remarkable, very, I would say, masculine voice. And Eve Gigliotti, she was kind of the latest addition to everything. So she is the lady who gets to sing this aria where she sits on the low register, and you think Rossini hates her. We love her.
It's a love-hate relationship. Thank you for coming. Enjoy the concert. Tell your friends about the pre-concert chats. This one has been videotaped, and you can watch that at our website, allclassical.org. Enjoy the concert. Carlos Kalmar.
Robert McBride.